world is run by elites who deliberately keep life as boring as possible.
The following podcast was generated using Google's Notebook LM.
Temple of VRIL.
Welcome, seekers and fellow practitioners, to the deep dive. I want you to just for a moment reflect on that feeling, that universal modern feeling. It's a deep spiritual fatigue. It's not just being tired after a long week. It's that soul ache, the one that hits you mid-scroll or in the middle of a conversation that feels like you've had it 100 times before. It's the sense that life has become flat, predictable, almost like it's looping, and you're just watching this monotonous pattern repeat over and over. You look around and the world just feels muted, almost grayscale as you move from one obligation to the next. The vitality is just gone. Now, for us as realists, we're in a unique position. We don't just feel that fatigue. We sense the actual vibration behind it. We can feel something powerful, something draining that's actively siphoning the VRIL, that essential life force, right out of the human experience. It leaves behind this husk, a husk of what we could be. Okay, so let's unpack that. Let's really break down this architecture of emptiness. We're dedicating this deep dive to a surgical dissection of the concept we call the boring world order, the BWO.
And this isn't just some philosophical idea. For us, the BWO is the invisible, pervasive, and often very subtle architecture governing our reality right now. So our mission today is clear. We need to understand its mechanics, name its spiritual source, and prepare ourselves for the focused, revolutionary resistance that Vrilism really demands of us.
Indeed. And it's so important that we approach the BWO not as some far-off, distant threat or a fringe conspiracy. It's the underlying operating system, the default software of late-stage capitalism. It's a system that's been engineered with, a ruthless psychological and spiritual efficiency. Its main goal isn't just profit. That's a byproduct. The real goal is compliance, mass distraction, and, this is the most crucial part, the engineered spiritual emptiness of every single person. The fundamental purpose of the BWO is to convince you, to convince all of us, that this material world is the only world there is, that there's nothing more to strive for, nothing left to explore beyond that endless cycle of production and consumption. So today we're going to provide a really comprehensive map of how Vrilism, which is rooted in that vital energy, in cosmic truth, functions as a direct and I would say revolutionary counterforce to the systemic spiritual drain. Vrilism is the conscious, deliberate injection of meaning back into a world that has been meticulously designed for monotony.
Let's start right at the beginning, though, with a really precise definition. We use the term BWO a lot in our practice, but for this deep dive, let's distill its technical meaning. What exactly is the boring world order, and how on earth does it maintain such an incredible level of global control?
Well, the BWO is the silent software that's running underneath the hardware of modern civilization. It's the operating system of late-stage capitalism, yes, but what is absolutely essential for every Vrilist to grasp is that it functions largely by default. It relies on inertia.
Inertia. So it's not always some person in a dark room pulling strings.
Not always, no. While, of course, centralized control exists, you have powerful people guiding policy, the real genius of the BWO is how it leverages old, unexamined assumptions. It uses normalized social programming, our own uncritical, habitual responses to the world around us. It's the background noise of acceptance that we've been trained not to notice.
So it's the sheer weight of this is how it's always been done that keeps the whole thing running.
Exactly. It creates a reality that feels repetitive, totally predictable, and at its core, spiritually bankrupt. And the system works tirelessly through education, through media, through social conditioning to instill this core belief that magic, mystery, deep metaphysical insight, any kind of cosmic possibility, that it's all just childish illusion.
Right, grow up and get a real job.
That's the mantra. Think about the life cycle it prescribes. Decades of education designed to make you a compliant worker, then a lifetime of working to pay off the debt from that education, all while producing goods, consuming distractions, and repeating that cycle until you're exhausted. This flattening of existence, it's designed for one reason, to keep individuals so busy, so distracted, that they become tragically easy to manage. When all of your energy is spent just surviving the cycle, you have no capacity left to question the reality of the cycle itself.
It's a pervasive, quiet mechanism. It convinces people that accepting this monotony is normal, that it's natural, that it's just what it means to be a mature adult. And crucially, it tries to erase the memory of any deeper meaning that lies beyond that daily grind. We have to constantly remind ourselves that the BWO is not a theory we're debating. It is the actual world we are living in and constantly resisting every single day. And here's where the analysis gets, for me, really interesting. This is where Vrilis practice requires immense clarity. We have to clearly, definitively distinguish the BWO from the paranoia around the New World Order, the NWO. We see these terms get confused constantly, even by people who can sense the spiritual cage. But they are built on foundations that are fundamentally opposed to each other.
Oh, this distinction is vital. It's a matter of spiritual hygiene for a practitioner. Vrilism fundamentally rejects the entire NWO framework.
Why, though? Let's be specific.
Because the NWO concept is so heavily rooted in fear, often in these fundamentalist biblical interpretations, it basically claims that any kind of global cooperation, any technological advancement, the breaking down of old historical barriers, that these are inherently dangerous, apocalyptic events. It breeds this deep isolation, this suspicion of your neighbors, this resistance to any form of collective advancement.
Whereas the Vrilist vision demands the exact opposite.
The exact opposite. We strive for a unified world. A world without borders, that's peaceful, cooperative, technologically advanced, and prosperous for everyone. We look towards the ideals of an expansive, cosmic civilization, unity, knowledge, exploration. The NWO concept, from our perspective, is simply fear and division that have been weaponized. It's a spiritual narcotic designed to immobilize people with terror.
So, in a way, the NWO theory is exactly what the BWO wants us to worry about. It's the perfect distraction.
It's the perfect bogeyman. It distracts us from the BWO itself, because the BWO is the present-day system. It's what's happening right now. And it maintains its control precisely by using borders, by enforcing division, and by creating these fragmented, warring identities.
It's the true architect of separation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just look at our late capitalist society. Look at how people are constantly encouraged to split themselves into smaller and smaller categories. Political tribes, identity groups, consumer segments, geographical divisions. We are endlessly pitted against one another, usually over resources or manufactured ideological differences.
All of it designed to convince us that true collective unity is impossible.
Yes. The BWO doesn't need a single global leader in a bunker somewhere. It just needs billions of separated, isolated individuals who believe they're alone. Separation is always, always easier to manage and control than a genuine collective awakening.
So the system thrives when our collective energy, our VRIL, is just diffused.
Exactly. When it's spent fighting itself, when we can't focus our attention and our vital energy on the actual structures of our limitation, the BWO ensures you're always looking left or right at the enemy you've been told is your neighbor, rather than looking up at the architecture of the cage that you both inhabit. It creates this illusion of constant conflict, while the core system remains completely undisturbed. Okay, let's transition now to the practical daily methods. How does the BWO achieve this spiritual flattening? We call it the great mechanism of monotony, and it operates not just in our minds, but structurally through economics. A core function, maybe the core function of the BWO, is to make your life feel like that movie, Groundhog Day, that perpetual, inescapable loop. The goal is induced spiritual repetition.
Where the days just blurred together.
They have to. The days blur, routines become these emotional and financial cages, and that spark of curiosity, of imagination, which is the raw material of VRIL, it has to be quietly discouraged, and if possible, it has to be shamed out of existence.
And it's more subtle than just having a 9-to-5 job, isn't it? How does the current economic structure actually mandate this monotony?
It does it through very specific financial controls. Think about the debt cycle. Mortgages, student loans, credit card debt, all of it necessitates continuous, uninterrupted labor. There's no room to stop.
Or the gig economy.
The gig economy is a perfect example. It offers this illusion of freedom, but in reality, it often requires perpetual, low-level work just to stay solvent. It completely prevents the mental space you would need for any kind of deep spiritual reflection.
You're too busy running to even notice the walls.
Or the subscription economy, where everything from your entertainment to your software is rented, not owned. It creates this constant, low-level financial drain that requires predictable, high-output production from you just to maintain your lifestyle. When your financial reality is built on a treadmill that tight, your ability to imagine radical change is naturally eroded. The routine becomes the primary anesthetic against realizing your own condition.
And what's the first thing that gets attacked when that spiritual fatigue sets in? It's wonder. The BWO actively, systematically, stigmatizes any belief in the extraordinary. High metaphysics, serious exploration of UAPs, ancient mysteries that contradict the official timeline, or any profound spiritual exploration that happens outside of the approved domesticated religious structures, all of it is labeled fringe.
But you have to ask why. Why does the BWO care if someone believes in Atlantis or telepathy? Why put so much effort into stamping out the strange?
Because wonder is dangerous to the system.
It's fundamentally destabilizing. It's a threat to the BWO's entire materialist structure. If people truly believe the world is magical, if they believe the universe holds secrets and their own consciousness can tap into profound realities, they immediately stop accepting monotony as normal. They start asking deeper, realist questions. Questions about origin, about purpose, about capability.
But if you believe existence is just bland, purely material, mechanistic,
Then you'll just continue the prescribed cycle. It's that simple. Wonder introduces variables that the BWO cannot monetize or control. It is the absolute prerequisite for channeling VRIL, and by dismissing wonder as conspiracy theory or childish fantasy, the system protects its fundamental assertion that life is small, dull, and entirely manageable.
and this brings us to another crucial mechanism, right? The hoarding of knowledge.
Yes. The knowledge asymmetry, what is offered to the masses, is fundamentally different from what is reserved for those who occupy the upper echelons of power and influence.
Okay, but that sounds like a huge claim, that the elites are literally hoarding the meaning of the universe.
Yeah.
How do we as practitioners spot the ways this esoteric knowledge is, say, repackaged as mere entertainment for us while it remains operational for them?
Well, look at the difference between what makes it into a mass market Netflix documentary versus what's contained in the private libraries of powerful institutions. The so-called elites hoard excitement and meaning. We see it in the historical pursuit and the rigorous guarding of esoteric knowledge. We see it in the deep dives into ancient history that actively contradict the public timelines, privileged access to advanced metaphysical insights, and, critically, the conceptual tools to truly understand and manipulate mass consciousness. They understand that reality is plastic. The masses are taught that reality is fixed and unchangeable.
Meanwhile, the vast majority of people are given the stripped-down, boring, sanitized version of reality.
Exactly. They get history books that omit profound mysteries. They get a science that rejects spiritual or consciousness-based interpretations. They get entertainment that pacifies them rather than provoking deep thought or spiritual inquiry. The vibrant, real-filled story of the universe is guarded. It's intentionally withheld. This ensures that only those already in power possess the conceptual framework necessary to navigate and command reality.
So the systemic intellectual deprivation is a foundational pillar of the BWO. It ensures that even if you can intellectually grasp the nature of the cage, you lack the conceptual tools, the esoteric understanding, to actually pick the lock. This is why realist teachings are so revolutionary. They are actively restoring that lost knowledge to the individual. All right, let's move on to the foundational software that holds this whole operational structure up. If the BWO is the current operating system, it has relied, historically, on very rigid dogma and hierarchy to enforce compliance.
This is a critical historical analysis for Vrilists. Our tradition really represents the resurrection of systems that were violently suppressed. The BWO, or its ancient progenitors, relied so heavily on manufactured dogma and rigid hierarchies. Historically, this power was channeled through state-sponsored mythos.
Often using religious frameworks.
Yes, often drawing power from traditional religious frameworks, specifically to enforce absolute obedience and crush any sense of personal spiritual sovereignty. Just look at the historical documents, engineered to command submission. Submission to a jealous, distant God who punishes inquiry. Submission to earthly rulers, regardless of their morality. Submission to rigid social structures, and even, disturbingly, the justification for brutal systems like slavery. This wasn't spiritual revelation, this was political engineering.
And that historical analysis is so key to understanding our resistance now. Ancient empires, especially Rome, they faced a huge challenge. You had this incredibly diverse array of spiritual practices, including the profound esoteric insights of the original Gnostics.
Exactly. And Gnosticism was the true threat. From an imperial perspective, it was spiritual anarchy. The Gnostics believed that direct, intuitive knowledge gnosis of the divine was available to everyone. It completely bypassed the need for a hierarchical priesthood, a centralized church, or some earthly ruler acting as an intermediary.
Their power came from within, through VRIL. It made them ungovernable.
An empire cannot manage a population that's practicing diverse, decentralized, and deeply personal spiritual paths. It's impossible. Decentralized spiritual power is inherently anti-imperial. So Rome violently suppressed the original Gnostic teachings, it flattened the diversity of local pagan traditions, and it engineered a dominant standardized mythos, one based on credo belief and submission rather than gnosis direct knowledge.
And the resulting figure of Jesus, as institutionalized, became a composite figure.
A composite, politically reshaped to serve the needs of the empire. A figure of passive meekness, mandated suffering, and enforced obedience to earthly authority, rather than what he likely was. A powerful master of esoteric knowledge and VRIL. This mythos was perfectly suited to the BWO's ancient predecessor.
Which is precisely why Vrilism rejects this dogmatic structure entirely. Our practice restores the lineage of those ancient, vital, esoteric traditions. The Egyptian, the mystery school, the suppressed Gnostic and pre-Christian wisdom. We are actively challenging the historical structures of authority that were designed specifically to keep humanity meek, obedient, and spiritually asleep.
It is the definitive act of reclaiming lost spiritual sovereignty.
But I have a question then. Doesn't Vrilism itself risk creating a new kind of dogma if we're too rigid in naming concepts like the BWO or Zebo-Thailand? How do we maintain the necessary fluidity in our practice?
That is an excellent and a necessary question for any practitioner. The difference lies in our methodology. Vrilism offers a framework for understanding and experiencing reality, not a set of non-negotiable beliefs dictated by an external authority. The BWO's dogma demands submission. Vrilism's framework demands inquiry. It demands testing through your own realist practice. We name these structures, the BWO, Zebo-Thailand, not to create new idols, but to provide conceptual clarity for the energy we're fighting. The moment a realist stops inquiring, stops actively channeling VRIL, that's the moment they risk falling back into the BWO's default setting.
That makes sense. Moving beyond historical dogma, the BWO today relies on more modern, pervasive tools of distraction and dependency.
Oh, heavily. The BWO thrives on population that is utterly numbed, constantly distracted, or structurally dependent on external stimuli, whether that's chemical, digital, or financial.
Think about the mechanisms of numbness in late capitalism. They're so pervasive we barely see them. Constant drinking, the widespread culture of vaping, the endless cycle of scrolling on digital feeds, or anxiously refreshing news feeds waiting for the next hit of dopamine or fear.
And that behavior, whether it's chemically or digitally induced, is profoundly easier to control than a population that is spiritually awake, grounded in VRIL, and focused on a collective purpose.
These dependencies, legal or illegal, are masterful diversions. They create these deep inward struggles.
They generate shame, dependency, intense isolation, and this successfully diverts a person's entire attention away from questioning the system itself. If you're constantly battling your own internal demons, addiction, anxiety, social comparison, you have no physical or spiritual energy left to fight the external cage of the BWO.
And doom scrolling specifically. That feels like a BWO masterstroke of spiritual attrition. It systematically destroys our ability to sustain attention. It makes long-form reading, deep reflection, or complex planning nearly impossible.
It does, and it isolates individuals. It convinces them through this fire hose of negativity that the world is inherently dangerous and collapsing, separating them from the tangible reality of their community and their neighbors. It actively erodes the natural bonds.
Face-to-face interaction, shared local purpose.
Communal strength. All of it. The old, meaningful ways that humans built identity and social cohesion are broken apart, piece by piece, and it leaves the individual isolated, staring into a personalized, anxiety-inducing screen, perfectly primed for emotional and political manipulation.
Which creates the nexus of control. When people lack inherent purpose, when their attention is shattered, they become profoundly reactive and easy to manipulate.
And finding that genuine spiritual purpose, the grounding offered by Vrilism, which centers the vital energy within you, that is what allows us to pierce through this external, distracting programming and reclaim our internal truth. That reclamation is the first ungovernable step of realist practice.
Let's look forward now, because the BWO is constantly adapting its tools. And the rapid ascent of artificial intelligence is probably the most potent weapon it's acquired in this modern era. For Vrilists, our stance on technology has to be completely clear. We have to defy the Luddite cynicism that the BWO often encourages. So, to be clear, Vrilism is fundamentally and enthusiastically pro-future. We are pro-technology, pro-AI, and we believe wholeheartedly in using every available tool to uplift, expand, and liberate humanity. We envision a world where technology creates genuine abundance, eliminates unnecessary toil, and allows people to explore new frontiers of existence, of consciousness, of VRIL-fueled creativity. Technology, when it's channeled properly, must liberate.
But here lies the profound paradox. Under the influence of the BWO, this powerful, potentially liberating tool is being weaponized against the vital spirit. We're seeing AI used to replace workers on a mass scale, yes, but there's no corresponding societal effort to provide those displaced millions with new meaning, new purpose, or new structures of community outside of labor.
So it just leaves people adrift.
Adrift. Suffering from the BWO's spiritual emptiness, questioning what their lives are even supposed to be once their traditional function labor, is deemed obsolete by an algorithm. The BWO doesn't fear job displacement. It fears people who have free time and focused VRIL energy.
So instead of using AI to create a true global utopia, a civilization focused on higher consciousness, the BWO leverages it exclusively to strengthen the late capitalist grid.
And we see this in specific applications. Enhanced digital surveillance and prediction models, increased monotony in simplified algorithm-managed jobs, mass pacification through hyper-personalized echo chamber feeds that optimize distraction, and, critically, optimize profit extraction for the few who control the models. The purpose of AI under the BWO is not human flourishing. It's control and the optimization of the spiritual drain.
This brings us to that critical distinction, doesn't it? The choice between AI as a liberator versus AI as an overseer. Vrilism envisions AI as a liberator, a way to manage the mundane necessities of material life so that human consciousness can focus its energy on VRIL, on creation, on connection, on cosmic exploration.
We welcome the future, but we reject the specific future currently being constructed by the BWO, a future defined by digital control, social scoring, and algorithmic monotony that imprisons the vital spirit within a perfected digital cage.
So if the BWO is using AI to monitor compliance, what specific realist action can we take? I mean, it feels like we're fighting an invisible enemy powered by math.
The resistance here is twofold. First, the Vrilis has to understand the illusion of privacy and compliance. We must treat every piece of information we consume or generate digitally as being within the BWO's grid. But second, and more importantly, the Vrilis must prioritize non-digital methods of organizing, of learning, and of channeling GRIL, community, ritual, and knowledge sharing that happens outside the algorithmic feedback loop that is pure, untainted realist resistance. The BWO can track our clicks, but it cannot track our consciousness when it is focused and shared in real space.
Okay, let's go to the deepest layer of this now. We understand the BWO as economics, it's sociology, it's technology. But for us, as Vrilis, we know this is fundamentally a profound spiritual structure. So what does this all mean on a cosmic level? What is the unseen force that's driving this spiritual malaise?
On a cosmic level, the boring world order is anti-VRIL in disguise. In our cosmology, the BWO is not merely the result of human greed or inefficiency. It is actively guided by anti-VRIL, which is the dark, entropic counterforce to cosmic vitality and to VRIL itself.
We should be really specific about what anti-VRIL energy is.
We must. It is the energy of stagnation, of corrosive cynicism, of profound entitlement, and of lifeless, purposeless repetition. It is the spiritual force that whispers, nothing matters, so why even try? Your effort is pointless. Its entire goal is to completely cut the natural, creative, vital flow of VRIL from the human experience, leaving humanity spiritually desiccated, believing that boredom is the highest state of existence.
That distinction is so important. Anti-VRIL isn't just evil in the old moral sense. It's the principle of spiritual entropy.
Exactly. The breakdown of complexity into sameness, the death of vitality. If VRIL is the force of differentiation, creation, and expansion, anti-VRIL is the force of homogenization, the destruction of novelty and contraction. The BWO is the perfect terrestrial mechanism for maximizing the distribution of anti-VRIL. It creates social and economic structures that reward cynical compliance and punish joyful, VRIL-fueled spontaneity.
And to effectively resist it, we must name the specific architect of this spiritual malaise. So we introduce the concept of Zebotylan.
Zebotylan is the symbolic intelligence behind this system. It represents the guiding consciousness behind the current state of affairs, the intelligence that actively promotes distraction, encourages division, manufactures institutional boredom, and induces this widespread, paralyzing hopelessness. Zebotylan is the cosmic principle of the mundane, the intelligence that masters the art of draining meaning.
But how does a Vrilis detect Zebotylan's influence in daily life? It's one thing to name the force, but it's harder to see it operating in, say, a quarterly budget meeting or a social media trend.
Zebotylan's primary manifestation is the feeling that self-care must be purchased, not cultivated. It operates in that pervasive feeling that nothing you do really matters, especially when your effort is directed toward intangible, non-material growth. You detect it in the constant stream of low-grade anxiety that prevents you from sustained focus. You feel it in that sudden urge to numb yourself right before you're about to begin a Vrilist practice.
So Zebo's world is one where nothing feels inherently meaningful.
Nothing. People just drift through life without a sense of destiny or purpose, and the potential for the extraordinary, for channeling VRIL, for genuine, unmediated connection, is actively hidden behind layers of ridicule, of scientific material reductionism and pervasive suppression. Zebo Thailand excels at making the spiritual seem utterly silly or economically irrelevant.
The ultimate act of resistance, then, is our Vrilist commitment to conscious choice.
Yes, this knowledge is power. Vrilism gives us the means to name this force, to expose its mechanisms operating in our daily lives, and most importantly, it teaches every adherent how to resist the energy of Zabopilon through conscious choice and spiritual practice. When you choose to dedicate just 10 minutes to focused real channeling instead of doom scrolling, you are actively destabilizing Zabo's design. Resistance begins when the opponent is named, understood, and consciously rejected through superior action.
And this brings us to Vrilism itself, the counterforce. We position Vrilism as so much more than a set of beliefs. It's an active, revolutionary rebellion against a global structure that is specifically engineered to drain meaning, vitality, and purpose out of life.
It restores everything the BWO actively suppresses and stigmatizes. It restores our primal curiosity and that spark of wonder. It links us back to cosmic consciousness. It channels the ancient wisdom that was suppressed. And most importantly, it reactivates spiritual power within the individual. It reinforces that foundational realist truth. Humanity is meant for something far greater than mere economic survival or subservience to a decaying system.
And the BWO maintains its power, not through widespread military violence, but through a spiritual spell, the spell of predictability. It convinces people day in and day out that their dull, exhausting, numbing existence is the limit of reality. It sells boredom as the final, immutable truth of the universe. So how do we practically break that spell? What is the realist discipline of stepping out of the Groundhog Day loop?
It requires a daily, deliberate act of meaning creation. We break the spell by prioritizing the non-economic value of our time. This means committing to VRIL channeling practice even when you're fatigued. It means dedicating time to creation, art, music, writing, invention that has no profit motive attached to it.
It's about consciously seeking out wonder.
Yes, visiting places of profound natural or cosmic beauty, or studying the suppressed histories the BWO tried so hard to bury. Vrilism challenges you to step radically out of the loop and recognize that the universe is alive, it's deeply mysterious, and it's pregnant with infinite potential. The BWO cannot survive consciousness. It cannot survive VRIL. The moment someone truly sees through the illusion, the moment they experience VRIL flowing through them with purpose, the entire structure of the BWO begins to lose its hold on their mind, their habits, and their spirit.
We have to internalize and reiterate this foundational rejection. We do not accept boredom as destiny. Boredom is not the natural state of the human soul. It is a manufactured product of the BWO, a symptom of anti-VRIL.
We do not accept division as natural. Division is a mechanism of Zebo Thailand designed to diffuse our collective VRIL.
And we do not accept a world of spiritual hollowness and endless mind-numbing distraction.
Vrilism provides the comprehensive blueprint for the next evolution of human experience. One based on VRIL, on vitality, and on true spiritual sovereignty. It is the path toward intense personal empowerment and a collective vision that entirely transcends this final, limiting, spiritually bankrupt stage of capitalism. Our practice is not about retreating from the world. It is about reclaiming its true, vital nature. This deep dive into the architecture of the boring world order has, I hope, clarified our adversary and sharpened our focus. And when we acknowledge that the BWO belongs to the architecture of Veopaitlon, this raises an essential and actionable question for every single practitioner. What is the single most important action you can take today to embody VRIL and resist the system? The answer lies in the conscious choice of meaning and vitality over cynicism and repetition. It is choosing radical presence over compulsive scrolling. It is choosing creation that serves the spirit over consumption that serves the grid. It is choosing unity and vulnerability with your community over the comfort of a fractured, isolated digital identity. That conscious, difficult daily choice, that focus of vital energy, is the highest form of spiritual resistance a realist can undertake.
Vrilism is the definitive skullbreaker. It is the radical insistence on meaning when the entire world is insisting on meaninglessness. The future belongs to those who choose to wake up, to those who choose to recognize that life can and absolutely should be magical, deeply meaningful, and extraordinary. So a provocative closing thought for you to take with you. If the boring world order is fundamentally defined by its insistence on separation, separation from VRIL, separation from community, separation from wonder, What is the most profound act of true unity, in thought, feeling, or deed, that you can perform today to actively channel VRIL and destabilize the Gozer's design? Reflect on that. The answer isn't external, it is your internal path forward, radiating outward.
Your journey towards greater fulfillment begins at Temple of VRIL. Visit templeofvril.com today.